You don't remember signing up for it. That's the first problem. It wasn't a big decision. No dramatic moment. No long-term commitment in your mind. Just a free trial. A quick upgrade. A small monthly charge that felt irrelevant. $5. $10. Maybe $15. Nothing worth thinking about. And that's exactly how it starts. Now imagine this. You wake up tomorrow, open your banking app, and see a single charge. $300. One payment. One line. Suddenly, it feels real. You pause. You question it. You might even cancel it. But that's not how the system works anymore. Because no one is charging you $300. They're charging you $9.99, $12.99, $7.49. Over and over again. Quietly. Individually invisible. Collectively expensive. This is the subscription economy. And in 2026, it's not just a business model. It's an environment. One you're already living inside. Let's slow this down. Because the shift didn't happen overnight. It started with convenience. Streaming instead of owning. Access instead of possession. Flexibility instead of commitment. It felt like progress. And in many ways, it was. You didn't need to buy CDs anymore. Or software licenses. Or expensive upfront products. You could just subscribe. Low cost. Low friction. Instant access. What could go wrong? Everything if you zoom out far enough. Let's make this real. Imagine a typical month. You pay for entertainment. Music. Cloud storage. Productivity tools. Fitness apps. Maybe a language app you open twice. A meditation app you forgot about. Individually each one feels justified. Reasonable. Even smart. But together? They start to form something else. A baseline. A fixed layer of expenses that didn't exist a decade ago. And here's where it gets interesting. Because unlike rent, or groceries, or utilities, these costs don't feel essential. Which means they don't get the same level of scrutiny. You don't sit down and question them every month. You don't renegotiate them. You don't even notice most of them. Because they were never designed to be noticed. The subscription model isn't just about payment. It's about psychology. Let's break that. When you buy something once, you evaluate it carefully. Price, value, need. But when something is split into small recurring payments, the decision changes. You're no longer asking, is this worth $120? You're asking, is this worth $10 this month? And those are very different questions. The second one is easier to say yes to. Much easier. Now multiply that across your entire life. 10 subscriptions. 15. Maybe more. Each one approved in isolation. Each one feeling insignificant. But together? They create a continuous outflow. One that never resets. And that's the key difference. A one-time purchase ends. A subscription doesn't. Now layer time on top of that, because this is where the real cost hides. Let's say you're paying $100 a month in subscriptions. Not extreme. Not unrealistic. Just normal. That's $1,200 a year. Over 5 years? $6,000. And that's assuming it stays constant. Which it rarely does. Because subscriptions don't just exist. They expand. You add new ones. You upgrade tiers. Prices increase quietly in the background. And because the changes are small, you absorb them. Without resistance. So what started as $100 becomes $150. Then $200. And at no point did it feel like a major decision. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because the issue isn't just the money. It's what that money could have become. If that same $100 a month was invested. Over time. It wouldn't just sit there. It would grow. Compound. Layer on itself. But subscriptions don't compound. They drain. And the longer they run, the more they remove from your future. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But consistently. Quietly. Now let's go deeper. Because the subscription economy isn't just about consumers. It's about incentives. Companies no longer optimize for one-time sales. They optimize for retention. For recurring revenue. For keeping you inside the system. Which means their goal isn't just to sell you something. It's to keep charging you. And to do that, they design for inertia. Free trials that roll into paid plans. Auto-renewals that require effort to cancel. Bundles that make individual services harder to evaluate. Pricing structures that obscure the total cost. Not aggressively. Not obviously. Just enough to keep you from stopping. Because the hardest action is cancellation. Think about it. You don't wake up and cancel 5 subscriptions in one day. You delay it. I'll do it later. I might need it. It's not that expensive. And that delay is where the system wins. Now zoom out. Because this isn't just about digital services. The subscription model has expanded into everything: transportation, food, clothing, software, education, even physical products. Ownership is slowly being replaced by access. And access is always temporary. You don't build equity in a subscription. You don't accumulate ownership. You don't reach a point where the payments stop and the value remains. It's a loop. Now compare that to older systems. You buy something. You own it. You use it for years. Today, you rent functionality indefinitely. And that changes the long-term math. Because instead of a declining cost over time, you have a permanent one. Now let's bring this back to your financial structure. Most people think their biggest expenses are obvious: rent, food, transportation. But the subscription layer sits underneath. Less visible, but increasingly significant. And unlike major expenses, it's fragmented, which makes it harder to control. You don't feel it as one number. You feel it as many small ones. And that fragmentation is what makes it dangerous. Now let's introduce something subtle: normalization. 10 years ago, having multiple subscriptions felt excessive. Today, it feels standard, expected. You don't question having 3 streaming platforms, or multiple digital tools, or recurring services for convenience, because everyone else does. And when something becomes normal, it stops being examined, even if it's quietly reshaping your finances. Now layer in income. As your salary increases, these subscriptions don't disappear. They grow with you. Better services, premium tiers, more convenience. So just like lifestyle inflation, subscription inflation follows. And once again, your expenses rise without a clear decision. Now let's make this more uncomfortable. Imagine tracking every subscription you have, every monthly charge, every recurring payment. Not just listing them, adding them. For many people, that number is higher than expected. Not because they're careless, but because the system is designed to distribute the cost. Now ask a different question. If you had to pay all of that up front, once per year, would you still say yes to everything? Probably not. And that gap between what you would approve up front and what you accept monthly is where the hidden cost lives. Now let's zoom out further. Because the subscription economy doesn't just change spending, it changes behavior. It reduces friction, which increases consumption. It removes ownership, which increases dependence. It spreads cost over time, which reduces awareness. And when all of those combine, you get a system that feels light but accumulates weight slowly. Now here's the irony: subscriptions are often sold as flexibility. Cancel anytime. No commitment. But in practice, they create continuity. Because you rarely cancel everything. You maintain a baseline. And that baseline becomes permanent. Now let's talk about control. Most people believe they are choosing these services. And they are. But the structure around those choices guides behavior. Ease of sign-up, difficulty of cancellation, constant exposure to upgrades. All nudging you in one direction. Stay subscribed. Now let's connect this to something bigger. Wealth. Because wealth isn't just about how much you earn. It's about what you keep, what you grow, what you control. And subscriptions directly impact all three. They reduce what you keep. They reduce what you can invest. They reduce the capital that could have grown elsewhere. Individually small, collectively meaningful. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They try to fix this by cutting everything, canceling aggressively, removing all subscriptions. But that's not the point. Some subscriptions are valuable. Some save time. Some improve quality of life. The issue isn't the existence of subscriptions. It's the lack of awareness. The difference between intentional use and passive accumulation. Now think about your own system. Which subscriptions are actively used? Which ones are just there? Which ones would you notice if they disappeared tomorrow? And which ones would take weeks to realize? Those answers tell you something important. Because in the subscription economy, the biggest cost isn't always money. It's attention. You stop paying attention, and the system keeps charging. Now let's end with something uncomfortable. If nothing changes, if you continue adding small payments, if you continue delaying cancellations, if you continue treating them as insignificant, what does that look like over 10 years? Not in isolation. In total. How much capital was redirected? How much opportunity was lost? How much growth never happened? Because the real danger of the subscription economy isn't that it's expensive. It's that it doesn't feel expensive. And anything that quietly drains you, without triggering resistance, tends to last longer than it should. So the question isn't, are subscriptions bad? It's, how much of your financial life is running on autopilot? And if you stopped for a moment and actually looked at it, what would you choose to keep? And more importantly, what would you realize? You never chose at all?